Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, school board members, everybody's here. Let's go directly into communications and reports, but I think what I'll do is we'll suspend that right away. Don't need a motion for it. And why don't we, rather than doing the finance update right away, let's go to 4.2, number 1, green wave recognition, because Jan's here. So.
Oh, yes, we have a celebrity here tonight, Jan, yeah, nice if she could come up, that would be wonderful. Not many, first of all, driving bus is challenging. And having perfect attendance, especially when we have like 7 storms during the winter, is even, a bigger accomplishment. So on behalf of the district, we would like to really congratulate Jan for perfect attendance. She never missed an AM or PM route, and I think she deserves a big round of applause. The board, is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll head right over there and we'll, Jan is also, nice to make sure we're informed of how the weather is in the country. Don't mind all right. Jan, I know you probably did some of these big ones.
Yeah, I think I have.
All right, ready, everybody? Awesome job, Jan. I'm just happy Jan could make it tonight. That was great.
Congratulations once again, Jan. Let's move back into 4.0 communications and reports, starting with 4.1, the finance report. So Amanda, floor is yours.
All right, so I have the budget for you to potentially approve later today. So this is the preliminary budget. There's still lots of unknowns. We do have some known information about our revenue streams now next year since the legislation passed. There's a lot of unknowns on the expense side, so I think it's a fairly conservative budget. I gave you the number without the construction fund too. The construction fund, we still have some leftover dollars that we're using to fulfill different tasks for LTFM projects. So the deficit looks a lot worse with that $500,000. So that's about what we have left in that fund, and we anticipate that we'll use that next year. It could change a little bit depending on how much ends up getting coded there this year. The other fund that you'll notice has a large deficit is the food service fund. And a couple things to note about that is that the federal reimbursement rate generally changes annually, but we don't know what next year's rate is. So these amounts are based off of the meals we served this year at this year's rate. Everything being funded, it's this parent pay kind of out of the equation a little bit. We'll still get some funds for like deli and extra milks and things like that. So I think it's conservative. Last year, if you compared fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23, the rates went up 27 cents a meal. So I don't know what we'll get this year, but hopefully it'll be more than that as costs are rising. What else did I write down? Student counts, I used April's student counts to project our revenue and just moved everybody up a grade and did what we project for the incoming kindergarten class. One thing to note in the revenues, there's still a lot of COVID dollars. So we're using the remaining of those COVID funds in the revenue side with it's all salary. So all of people like the mental health staff is mainly what's in those COVID funds. I think that's all I had written down. Any questions?
I would say like on the food service side, it's going to be hard to control revenue because, now with free meals, it's going to be a set rate. The one thing that we won't have as much of, I would anticipate, would be lunch debt. So, right now we're going through that process. We've been doing that all year, but we're trying to collect some debt right now. And the only revenue sources that we can control pricing would be extra milk and deli. So
second meals, I suppose.
and second meals as well. That's right. So we want to make sure that those are staffed and those are revenue producers, so we can help offset the added expenses that have occurred in the last few years in the food service fund.
So I wasn't a board member when they did the free meals during COVID and stuff. So do we get reimbursed dollar for dollar?
No, we get reimbursed per meal, so it's a set rate per meal.
Okay, so we could end up losing a
Yeah.
lot of money depending on what milk, bread and all those other contracts come up.
I would say there would be some pushback from districts in the state because the state is the one that passed the free meals and they're gonna have to adjust their rates if school districts are going in the red big time in the school lunch fund.
Do we know if it went up that same 27-cent rate, what the revenue that,
I didn't, I just looked up this number a little bit ago, so I
Yeah.
didn't calculate it.
But
How
it's a
much
good
money-
question. It's a good
How
question.
much money did we lose during the COVID?
We didn't actually lose money during COVID, in the food service funds. Most schools saw an increase in their
Okay,
food service funds. The rates were higher. Long, complicated story, but there's lots of different funding streams for food service. And at one point, we were on the highest reimbursement rate. Now this year, we've dropped down quite a bit. We're back on the National School Lunch Program. And that's what we'll be on next year as well. It's just what the federal government doesn't pick up, the state will pick up. So we'll be on the federal government rates.
Okay.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Yeah.
About, COVID-19 funds.
Mhm.
That means there's going to be positions that we're gonna have to figure out. Is it like one more year of this
Yep, so
for some of these?
yes,
positions?
there's a little bit under $700,000 of revenue in the general fund that are funded by COVID funds at the moment. So unless the legislation
Anticipate those
passed,
running out
yes.
this year?
Yeah, we have to
Okay.
use those by September of,
2024, so we'll use them
Yeah.
all in the next school year. We'll use the remaining of our COVID funds
On, like.
on staff.
On staff,
Yep.
there's excellent staff
Hmm.
that are gonna have to be.
Yep.
figured out.
Yes. Hmm.
There's an increase coming from the state next year too.
Yes, so that's built in there already. So we got 4 point something
4% year one.
on the formula and 2% the next year.
Yep.
And then it's indexed to inflation after that with a
Mhm.
max of 3.
Yeah.
max of 3?
Year one is 4%, year two is 2%, but then it's linked to inflation.
Yep.
There's also some extra funding for special ed cross subsidy and EL cross subsidy. So, the ask was for 5 and 5 because that's what school districts really felt they needed, and 4 and 2 with the cross subsidy isn't 5 and 5, but it's better than 2 and 2 or 0 and 0 like we've seen before too.
Mhm.
Anything else, board members? All right, thanks, Amanda. Okay, let's move on to 4.2, administration and department head superintendents of schools. Mike, you're.
All right, just the only thing I have left would be the MSBA model policy changes. It's significant. This just came out within the last, 10 days probably from MSBA. So there are 29, I think plus the Narcan, or 29 or 30 new policies or updated policies. A couple are new, but updated policies due to legislative changes. Nancy has created a folder that she either has or will be sharing with all the administrators, all of the board members. I think the policy committee is going to be busy going through those. You'll need to take a look. You aren't mandated to adopt these policies. These are recommendations from MSBA, but some of them you'll be able to approve in one meeting because it's a change in law, and some may take a little more time. But it's a lot to go through. I think districts, just like us, are going to be overwhelmed and busy going through all of these. The naloxone or Narcan policy, we are working through that and have some training coming in August. Some of our staff might get trained a little before that, but we have to make sure that we have that on hand, at least 2 doses in each building.
Does that include like bus garage and stuff?
We just got clarification on that. So it's just the school buildings, not the bus garage and not the outside athletic complex. There's a fella from Bemidji that's going around and training people for free and also bringing supplies of Narcan. A lot of districts are putting like 2 in each AED box and then keeping some extra in their nurse rooms.
So we don't need them like at the arenas that we rent or anything like that?
No. We were just told school buildings, so.
But we could modify that, I guess.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
could be. And I don't know if the city has something, if they're gonna be required to or not, so.
Okay.
But there's a lot of work to do here, so that was really my theme. There are also some notes in there, and I don't have it listed on the board agenda about the recommendations for administrative positions. I know that my recommendation would be to have Saraya Driscoll in a shared position at South Point and keep on some of her duties, but I know we can have that discussion later, so.
I don't think there's anything else, and so we jump directly into committee reports. So we have anything on committee reports?
Just that the policy committee is gonna have to schedule some time to get together with the superintendent. Saraya served on that, but I think it would be very important to keep at least one building principal, from each site on that, especially when we're talking about student discipline and student appearance and those things that they work with on a day-to-day basis to get their feedback.
Any questions on the report so far? Okay, let's move on to 5.0 consent agenda. Does anyone want anything pulled out of the consent agenda? All right. Before doing so, I need to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented and uploaded into board book.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right. Any questions or discussions? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. 6.0 is opportunities for citizens to speak on items not on the agenda. I had none. Superintendent Colness, did you?
There were no requests.
All right. Okay, so here's where we're gonna pause. Lynn? We're gonna close the meeting. You know what? I'll just make the motion. I'll make a motion to, we're gonna close the school board meeting, pertaining and utilize Minnesota statute 13D.3 labor negotiation strategy and close the meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. Questions or discussion, board members before we close it, and then I'll explain to the crowd what we're meeting here once, if we do get the votes to go through to close it. Anything? Okay, all those in favor of closing the meeting per MS 13D, Minnesota statute 13D, 0.03 signify by stating aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. So what I'm going to ask everybody in the crowd to do is unfortunately get up, have to leave the meetings, a closed session per negotiation strategies. We moved to close the meeting. When we're done with the closed meeting, we'll move to reopen the meeting and come out and get everybody. Can't tell you how long it's going to take. If it's going to take 2 minutes, if it's going to take 5 minutes, if it's going to take an hour, I can't tell you that. So all I can tell you is that meeting's closed. We'll get you back in as soon as possible. Jason, from your perspective, shut it all down. We'll follow our process on what we need to do for the closed meeting. Those that I'd like to